everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Joyful Money Podcast. Today, I am super thrilled because I have a very special guest. My special guest is Laura Patterson. I am so excited because she has so much wisdom she's going to share with us. And the goal is for you to take your business to the next level with her wisdom and knowledge. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you for having me, Joy. I'm very excited to be here, and I hope that everyone will walk away with at least one good idea.
Awesome. Okay, so why don't we start by an introduction? Tell us who you are and tell us about how you got started and your entrepreneurship path.
Okay, well, I never intended to be an entrepreneur, and I imagine that maybe there's some people in your community who never intended that either. But here we are. So we just need to learn as we go and figure out how we can be really good at it and help our customers, help our
Mm.
employees and our communities thrive. And that's really our goal, right? To do something of value to the communities and stakeholders that we serve. So I began my career in financial services. I had an amazing mentor. He was very entrepreneurial, and my career was really about sales, marketing, operations, product, all the things that you would do inside a company over the course of a couple of decades. I worked in startups, small companies, and large enterprises. Maybe a name that some of your customers or members of your community might recognize is Motorola. I spent 14 years at the Motorola semiconductor industry. Amazing ride. It was a fantastic time in my life. When I left Motorola, I joined a small company, not a startup, an established small company, family ran, family owned by entrepreneurs. Uh, that was really my second time working for an entrepreneur. I'd worked one other time in my career prior to Motorola for an entrepreneur. So I knew what I was getting into because entrepreneurs are a different animal, operate differently than, professionally ran organization like Motorola, publicly traded company at the time, $20 billion in revenue and hundreds of thousands of
Mm.
people or 100,000 people. And I have to admit, it was chaotic, extraordinarily chaotic, unlike what I had been in for even in my first entrepreneurial company. And I realized that that was a challenge for everyone to be successful and to help the clients be successful, their customers be successful was the internal chaos. I jumped from the fire to the frying pan into when I got an opportunity to take the helm of marketing for a enterprise software company here in Austin, also founder-led. I was one of the first spin-outs from an organization. And those at that time, I had been with the company almost 2 years. In Austin, if you could, I say this all the time, if you could spell marketing, you could get a job. And so my phone was ringing with a bunch of startups that were now popping up like mushrooms in Austin. And I thought, maybe this would be the time to consider being an entrepreneur. And I had a colleague who was also having his phone ringing constantly. And he was considerably older than me. And he said, let's form a company. We'll convert
Mm.
all of these job opportunities into customers and we'll form a company. And I said to him, well, I don't know anything about running a company. And he said, oh, I do. So, so I became a co-founder. And I have to admit, I had no clue what I was doing. And this is 1999. And for those of us who know how quickly the world can change, and it does quickly change, 2001 came along, and that was 9/11. It was also the
Mm.
dot-com bust here in Austin and other places too. And it was also when my partner's wife came down with a very aggressive form of cancer, and he had to resign as from the company in order to provide care and better care for her. And so I had an opportunity to continue to be an entrepreneur or to pull up stakes. And
Mm.
I chose to continue to be an entrepreneur and I have learned a lot over the last couple of decades. So that is my journey to entrepreneurship. Probably a little long-winded, but hopefully give some insight. It is a choice, right, that we
Mm.
are making. And there are consequences to all choices.
Yes, I love that you said it's a choice because I feel like as entrepreneurs, like you said, we are different breed of humans, right? Why would someone choose the seemingly hard path, right? Because I personally feel like 9 to 5, working for an employer, you have a steady paycheck. How can someone be so crazy to then say, "Oh, I would rather be an entrepreneur to create my own path in the world"? Like, what do you think makes people decide to be entrepreneurs? And in your experience, what skill sets or mindset is required to be successful in business? Because I believe that starting a business is the easy part. Staying in business, I think that's the hard part. So in your experience, what do you think people need from a skill set and a mindset perspective to stay in business? Because you've been in business since 1999.
So, Joy, you're really quite intuitive. You're very much right. In fact, the research would bear out that you are correct. It's easy to start a business. It's hard to stay in business. In fact, many businesses fold within a
Mm.
couple of years. I do think there is something different about being the entrepreneur, and I do have some of those traits. I am missing some of those traits, and I understand what those are. I'm very self-aware. But some of the most important traits is, do you have a way to do something better that will bring value to the people you want to serve that you cannot do in another way?
Mm.
And that for me, that was true. Working inside companies, I could serve the company, but there were so many other issues, especially in the smaller companies, that even though I might have a point of view, I had no control over them. And in a large company, even less control over them, right? Because it's a huge machine and it runs like a machine. And I wanted to be able to make a positive impact and make a difference for the people that I serve, and to be able to have some control over the quality of what was being delivered, and to make sure that it was going to do something that would be beneficial to my customers. And so that was what was in my heart, and my passion that kept me going. But the other attributes are, you have to have some degree of resilience. You have to have a growth
Mm.
mindset. You have to have grit, and you have to have perseverance, because stuff happens. I was about to say that other word, but stuff happens that you have no control over. There's a lot of things you don't control, and you have to recognize, I can't control that. I can only control what I do or react to that. What is
Mm.
my next choice? And as an entrepreneur, especially if we're going to be in a smaller company, and I have a boutique firm, so my firm is not tens of thousands of people, it's the dirty dozen. And so the idea is, how do we pivot and change? Because
Mm.
there's always change. So whether that's a 9/11 or a dot-com bust or a great recession or new opportunities that present themselves that just pop up, whether that's like AI, each thing is both a challenge, but then how do we turn that into an opportunity? What does that allow? How does that allow us to improve, to grow, to serve? And so that's kind of, I think, some of the things that separate the worker from the entrepreneur. And people who just want to do the 9 to 5, I have nothing against that. I did that for a couple of decades, and there's a lot to be said for that, because when you are the entrepreneur, it is not 9 to 5. My world
Mm.
starts very early, it goes very long, by choice. Again, it is a choice. Uh, but I want to be responsive. Being responsive is a part of my DNA, and that means I don't turn off just because the clock says 5 o'clock. If I get an email from a customer who needs me, I'm going to be responsive. I try to set some realistic boundaries, right? Because I am a human being and I do have family obligations. But I also believe that in service, that it's not abused. I don't want to be abused, but I do want to serve. And I think that entrepreneurs feel that way often. That's why we're here.
Yes, I
I mean,
love,
you're an
I
entrepreneur. What do you think? I mean, do you think that resonates?
Yeah, it absolutely resonates. Like exactly what you just said. And I love how you keep saying it's a choice. It's a deliberate choice. And I feel like even though it's not guaranteed, like you don't have a guaranteed paycheck, I feel like there is unlimited potential as an entrepreneur. So for example, for me, I can set how much money I want to make, right? There is no ceiling in business. I can make as much money as I want to make, and I get to have that creative freedom. So when I sleep at night and I have an idea, I just go and I implement. If I was still in corporate, I have an idea, I have to tell my boss, explain all of those things. So I feel like the payoff as an entrepreneur, whether that is monetary, is huge. But I feel like people need to be aware that there is going to be hard work involved and be willing, like you said, to be resilient, to have the grit, to do the thing, to decide on time. I feel like entrepreneurs are fast decision makers. An employee, you want to be perfect. In entrepreneurship, you make a decision, you go, you implement, and then you recalibrate, and then that's how you grow. So thank you so much for that. And I can absolutely resonate. And I think the people listening as well can resonate with what you just shared. Now, Laura, one thing I absolutely love, in fact, two things you're going to teach us today. One is customer centricity, and the other one is strategy. So let's start with customer centricity because this is a framework that you've developed. You now have a roadmap that you can teach us to grow our businesses. So over to you. Tell us, how, based of all of your experiences, 1999, you've been in business, you're hugely successful. How can we, as business owners, grow our businesses being customer focused?
Great question, and thank you. It is definitely a passion of mine. So I customer centricity as a phrase is a buzzword, but it has actually been a key part of how I operate in the world pretty pretty much ever since I was being entrepreneurial. I mean, I learned pretty early on, whether it was I grew up in the Midwest. So I know you're in Canada, right, Joy? So you see that white stuff that comes down at winter. So I grew up in the
Yeah.
Midwest. We have that too. So shoveling snow, raking leaves, whatever it might be, lemonade in the summer. I grew up doing things to earn money, and I learned pretty quickly that if I wanted to have business value, I needed to have customer value. And that is the essence of, what's a key part of being customer centric is recognizing that we're here to create customer value. In the words of Peter Drucker, the purpose of business is to create a customer. And if we don't create value for those customers, we can't create value for business. So that's been with me very, very long. And it got honed over the years by others. One of my first professional jobs was within the insurance industry. And the gentleman I worked for, Dwight Prade, was just one of the most remarkable human beings. And I've said this before, I tell people this before, and this will be hard for some people to visualize because it's from a very different era. But he hired me to be the customer relationship manager, which I know today is a piece of technology, but I was actually doing that job as a human being. And one of the things that he wanted me to do as part of my work was create a customer segmentation model. And back then, the only computer on my desk was something connected to a mainframe. And so all of the information about customers was kept in manila folders. And so he opened a door. This was very early, right? Like the first day or two that I started the job. And he said, these are all our customers, meaning the manila folders. It was an entire closet of just rows and rows and rows of manila folders. He goes, I would like to create a customer segmentation model. And so that was a very early. So customer, and then from there, I went to work in a application software company for an entrepreneur, and he had a service bureau, which was customer centric, and he wanted to be able to enable some of his customers to actually be more independent and not leverage the service bureau, but had become too big. And so my job was to help them transition to the next capability that he offered in order they would be more successful. And from there on to Motorola, where customer acquisition and customer retention. So it's been with me all along. And so in order to do customer centricity, which is not catering to every customer's whim, I want your community to understand this is not about saying yes to every customer request. This is about
Mhm.
making decisions with your customer in mind and knowing what your customer values and what they need to succeed. If you understand that, then you can begin to put together a customer-centric roadmap and business. And in order to know that, you have to be able to ask good questions of your customers. So you have to have insights and data about your customers in order to be able to say, I understand what not only your pain, but what you value and what you value from us. and here's how I can continue to help you be successful. So here's a question for your community. Do you know what success is for your customers? If you don't know what success is for your customers, it's time to ask. So
Mm.
that's a little takeaway. All right. Once you know what that is and what the value is that you bring, now you have the opportunity to have a value proposition and how to position yourself against the competition and the status quo and the ways they've always been doing things. And now you can begin to figure out how you're going to get traction for that. But until you know the answer, what is success for your customers? What do they value and what do they value from you? Those are the questions you need to be able to answer to be customer centric. That's the beginning of the framework.
Wow, I love this so much. And most of the listeners of this podcast, they are coaches, they are consultants. So I know this message will resonate so well because many times I see coaches designing programs even before they're signing clients into the program. So based off of what you've said, you need to understand what success is for the end clients first before you start like building the program, doing all the courses, because ultimately you want to sell something that the market needs, right? You don't want to spend your time building something and then nobody needs that. And I love how you said ask the questions because I feel like as coaches, we are trying to help the person coming behind us. So we're almost like two steps ahead. And based off of our experience, many times we create programs thinking we are serving people without actually asking them the question to say, what do you need? What would success look like for you? I love that question so much. And that is gold. Okay, so let's talk strategy. You also have a framework where you teach the key to thriving in an ever-changing world. And I love that you mentioned AI because right now AI is the thing that is changing our world. So, in your experience, how is having a great strategy the key to thriving, regardless of how the world is changing?
Okay, I want to talk about strategy and I want to separate strategy from AI, which is a tool. Okay.
Yes.
So I've also shared this story, and I'm going to share it here for your community. My father, who I miss every day, was very handy. He had a little work area, and he did a lot of our do-it-yourself projects, all kinds of projects. He was very good at doing that, and we had a lot of tools. And I probably was about maybe 3 years old when I got my first red toolbox with all my little tools in it and that I could, play with like the screwdriver and the hammer and the pliers. People can envision that. And I love, and still to this day, loved going to the hardware store. And back then, you went to like a neighborhood hardware store, not a big box hardware store, but a real neighborhood hardware store. And the people in there actually knew how to do things too. So my father would go and say, I'm working on this piece of wood. For example, my mother's hope chest, and he wanted to uh, uh, make it into an antique stain. It had been peeling and it needed something, and he was talking to the guy, and the guy knew exactly how to do that. So that's an example of how things are different today. But when I would go with him, and back then, people just didn't pay any attention. I was probably about 5 years old, and I would be meandering around in the store, touching in all the cool tools and envisioning what they might do, and just being probably a regular nuisance if you were to ask the salespeople. But still, I was having fun. And on one of these excursions, I went to my father, and while he was engaging in a conversation, and I said, pulling on his coat, something like this. I was 5, so I don't remember the exact words, but something like this. Daddy, I just saw the most amazing tool, and I just got to show it to you because we got to have it, right? Now, I came from pretty meager means, and so tools were not something we just could buy on a whim. He had to have a real need. But he accommodated me and let me pull him over to show him a tool. And I don't know what it was, but it was a big tool, something like a bandsaw. And he looked at me and he said, "Oh yeah, that's a really cool tool." He looked at me, he goes, "Do you know what it does?" And I said, "No, but I like it." Right? And he said, "Yeah, it's pretty nice. It's a nice tool." And he told me what it did. And he says, "So do you know how to do that with your hands? Let's say it was a saw. Do you know how to sand with your hands with sandpaper?" And I'm thinking, no, I don't think I'd ever done sandpaper yet. I was only 5. Yeah, which by the way, shortly thereafter, I was handed some sandpaper. So this is probably what it really was, and learned how to do sanding of wood um, on that hope chest that he was redoing. But anyway, I said no. He says, well, here's the thing about tools.
Mm,
If you don't know how to do it manually, when you
mm,
automate it, you will only do more damage faster. So think
mm,
about that for any tool you're using. If you don't understand the mechanics of what is a good email structure and a good email campaign and what are best practices with email, or what is the best way to do social media, whatever it might be in the downstream of the work you're doing, selling, whatever it is, if you don't understand that and how to do it well, automating
mm,
it will not make it better. It may make the work faster, but it might be actually destructive work as opposed to productive work. So that's a little bit about tools. We'll come back to AI. Strategy for a lot of people is hard for them to understand because they think that when they're doing an email campaign, that's a strategy. And that's
mm,
not a strategy. That's a tactic. And it's supposed to bring a program to life. And that program, whatever that program might be, is what's going to bring your uh, strategy to life. So let's say an example of a strategy might be the difference. Let's say one of your strategies would be, I'm going to go after 3 of these primary segments because they have this problem, and these are the people inside, a persona base. These are the personas that I am going to go and engage in order to get traction for my business. So it might be a persona based strategy. An alternative that would be, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually not going to do any direct sales. I'm going to create a channel strategy, and I'm going to go get partners that do X, Y, and Z. And that's how I'm going to go to market. That would be 2 different approaches to a strategy, as an example. So one could be persona based, another might be channel based. You might say, I'm going to make a strategy around looking at key regions like hubs, a hub strategy where I can get high numbers of or high concentration of potential customers in these hubs, right? As opposed to, I'm going to have a farming strategy and I'm going to farm my region. So those are all different examples of, and there's so many. I mean, come to the website, Vision Edge Marketing. We talk about strategy on our blog posts all the time, all different kinds, vertical versus niche, adjacent market strategies, ecosystem strategies, all of those different kinds. So feel free to come and peruse all the different things that we write about strategy. But the key thing is, and I want to take us back to customer centricity, you want your strategy to be customer centric. And that means you need
mm,
to understand what success is for your company in customer centric terms. So, for example, when I'm talking to an entrepreneur or any business owner or leader, even sometimes people on the board, and I'll say, well, and I'll ask this question. In X time frame, maybe it's by the end of the fiscal year or the end of 24 months, whatever it might be, what does success look like for you? Right? Same question I mentioned earlier. What does that look like? And often I get an answer like this. It looks like X number of dollars in revenue.
mm,
And I say, we don't market to buckets of revenue. We don't sell to markets to buckets of revenue. Tell me more. What kind of
mm,
revenue? Who is the revenue coming from? What are they buying? How much are they buying? Are they people you already serve? Are these new people? Are they in markets you already are in? Are these new markets? And so I'll ask questions like that because now I'm getting them to think through, oh, some percentage of that market, some percentage of that revenue is going to come from, if you're already in business, some number of our existing customers who are going to continue to buy what they've always bought, right? So recurring revenue. Some percentage of that revenue is going to come from existing customers who are going to buy some new things. Oh, we're going to grow share of wallet. Some of
mm,
this is going to come from new products that we're going to take into a new market. And so now we're talking about product adoption and market penetration, right? Now I'm thinking, okay, now I have to think about the strategies that are going to work with each one of those kinds of outcomes. Because what the strategy is to existing customers for recurring revenue is probably going to be different than what it is to go after new customers in a market I am not currently serving, maybe with an existing product or a new product. Those will be different strategies. So I might use a stepping stone strategy or an adjacent market strategy in a new market with an existing product, but I might use something else for a new product in a new market. I hope I'm making sense. What do you think, Joy? Do you think people in your community understand what I'm trying to convey here?
Yes, absolutely. And I love the way you talked about, like the example you gave about strategies, where you say channel strategy or persona strategy. So most of the listeners of this podcast, they do the persona strategy. So when they are building products and services for clients, they are looking at it from a perspective of the person, the persona they are trying to sell to. So I love how you broke that down very clearly. So I am curious, and I'm sure many people listening are curious. Tell us more about your company, Vision Edge Marketing. Like, what do you help people do? Companies or businesses? How do you help people grow?
Okay, so what Vision Edge Marketing does is a little bit different than some of the other things that go on in the work that I do, which is nice, right? I get a chance to do some things that bring me joy, and then I also have the opportunity to serve customers through Vision Edge Marketing. So in Vision Edge Marketing, we work in the B2B space. We typically work with middle market to larger companies. So they're typically not solopreneurs or coaches or freelancers, and they are always B2B. And we help them create customer-centric growth strategies that are based on insights from real data, and then how to operationalize those and measure their success. So that's really what we do so they can accelerate their growth. It's pretty straightforward. Of course, in 1999, that was not the way things were done, and here's a way to maybe articulate that people can relate to. Um, in B2B companies that we work with, they typically have relatively complex products that take a consultative sell and often have long sales cycles. They are not selling chocolate that you will buy on your way out of the grocery store, right? And the decision to buy, they usually are relatively expensive, and the decision to buy has implications for the long term. And so you don't want to, it's not like, oh, I didn't like that, that we're creating a new drug. So I'm going to change my mind about what the components are. If you were to do that, that might set your company back a very long time. Or I don't like these parts anymore in this new product that I'm building. But if I want to change out the parts, and now I've affected the spec, and that's going to affect all the equipment we use to manufacture the product, right? So there's huge implications in the decisions that their customers make. And therefore, they do need to think differently about how they're going to grow and the strategies they're going to use, because it is a complex consultative sell for our customers. That's very different than some other things that we might do. So they might come to us and help us build out a strategy, help to build together a go-to-market launch for a new product, or help figure out getting insights into into features that go into that, or to help build out positioning and messaging for their company, especially if have just acquired new customers, or acquired new companies, or acquired new products, or change something around the way they do that they need to modify their positioning and messaging. We might help them identify better segments to go after and build out segmentation models. Those are all kinds of things that we would typically do that might be slightly different than some of the people in your community. Where they have in common is a customer buying journey, understanding how the customer buys, what are the touch points, what are the channels. All companies need to understand that. Some customer buying journeys, like buying the chocolate on the way out from the grocery store, are very short, and some customer buying journeys are very long. I imagine that your community of coaches and consultants, that's probably somewhere in the middle, and it probably depends
Yeah.
on what the offer is. And this goes back to also being to having clarity around personas versus roles versus profiles. A lot of people mix those up. And so, and let me give you an example. Let's say that you are coaching chief financial officers. We'll just pick a top, right? That is a role, chief financial officer, and it has a title. And usually it has some information around the job that they do, the jobs to be done. It also has a profile. That profile is what kind of education they have, typically how many years of experience they've had. It's not necessarily all about the jobs to be done. It also would include things about the people who do the job. Some general
Mhm.
information. This is their education. They typically get this kind of a degree. They typically have had this much experience. They've typically had this many years of experience, so forth and so on. But a persona would give you a more insight into the personality, the character of that.
Mm.
So, for example, what if you were providing coaching services to what you might call a visionary CFO, someone who sees themselves as acting in a strategic capacity inside the companies they serve, versus a risk management CFO, someone who sees their job as predominantly keeping the company from, doing something that would put them at risk, whether that's financial or some other level of risk. Those would be two different personas, and you would have very different things that would be going on and how you might message to them. So maybe that's an example to think through for your people. Are they working to roles, profiles, or are they really working, if they think, to personas?
Yeah, I love that so much. And yes, I love how you differentiate. So two CFOs they have the same title, but because of their function, then how like the marketing and the messaging will be completely different and how you serve them. I love that so much.
There's usually somewhere between 3 to 7. Seven's a
Mm,
lot. Three usually is common. Five is also common. Personas in a role. So think about
mm.
that. Give that some thought. Even entrepreneurs, there we have different personas. And so, what if you were marketing to entrepreneurs, companies? What would be some of those different personas? And it takes research to figure that out. So that's the kinds of things we help our customers do is figure those things out.
Wow, I love this so much. So, going back to your journey as an entrepreneur, at the beginning, before you started to have some traction and make money in your business, what do you think helped you to stay in the game? Like, walk us through your mindset to be resilient and persistent, to have that grit to keep showing up.
Hmm. Well, I'm kind of a stubborn person.
Me too.
So I'll just put that out there. Um, I'm married to an entrepreneur. I think it does help that I have a partner in a totally different industry. He's in construction. And so I had someone to talk with.
Mm,
I think it's very helpful to have others who are going through similar experience, whether you join a community locally, or a part of a chamber, or you join a national group or wherever it is, and so that you're not feeling like you're alone. I think that can get
mm,
very hard on all of us and very wearing. And being clear about when you need to stop and take a moment and regroup, and knowing when you might need to pivot is important too. I think those are things that kept me going, is recognizing, okay, that strategy is not working. And I kind of believe in two things, and I will share them, and these are not new ideas. One is the notion of a sprint. What are the things I need to get done that will move the ball down the field, as we say here in Texas? If it's not moving the ball down the field in the sprint, then it's not working. Time to change, right? So having clarity around what those sprints are, and what is the big picture and what are the sprints I have to have along the way and to get to where I want to go, and what are the milestones or measures of success in each sprint that tell me that I'm moving the ball down the field to be able to get that touchdown. And the goal at the end of every sprint is that you've moved the ball. Ideally, it would be great if you could get the touchdown in one move, but unfortunately in business it's not usually that easy. But it would be great if it was that easy. The second thing that I think is really important is being flexible. I'm not,
mm.
again, not necessarily saying you can do things that you can't do, but you have to definitely be flexible and experimental. I think would be a third thing. It's okay to run an experiment. Say, I'm going to try this. For example, um, one of my advisors said, you have a lot of things that you tell people, whether it's in a podcast like this or in a blog or in a keynote, and some of those are really cool. Why don't you create a thing called Thursday Thoughts and put those out every week? I said, okay. I mean, how hard? It's not hard. It wasn't going to cost any money. We already have Canva. How hard could it be? You know, I have a list of whatever number of quotes, and we'll see if those resonate with people. And I said, we'll make it an experiment. And if we get some feedback that these Thursday thoughts people come back and say, and we connected them to content so that here's an article you can go read related to this thought, this quote, then, that's success if it actually brings some engagement. And so we tried it for 6 months and we really didn't get engagement. It wasn't hard to do, but it's not worth doing if it's not tied to the strategy, and it's not worth doing if it doesn't produce results. So running experiments is a good thing. Think about what is the experiment? What are the results that you expect to get from the experiment that would tell you to go or no go? So we terminated that experiment because it wasn't producing the results of engagement that we had set for it. So I think as an entrepreneur, that's something you can do that's really hard for a company to do, right?
Mm.
So give yourself grace to have experiments. So sprints are very helpful. Knowing when to be flexible and running experiments are three things that as entrepreneurs we can do better than large companies.
Wow, I love that so much, Laura. And I love how you talked about the experiment you did, because in my experience, I see so many business owners, entrepreneurs, they start doing a strategy or a tactic, they do something for so long, it isn't working, but because of the sunk cost, they just keep doing it because they're like, oh, I'm already doing this for so long, I might as well keep doing it. I love how you said after 6 months, you didn't get the results you were looking for and you ended the experiment. And I think that's a valuable lesson for people listening. If you've been doing something, I know people have been doing something for 3 years, they're not getting the results they want, and they just keep doing it because they feel like they've put in so much money into that particular strategy, and then just pulling out doesn't they don't feel like it makes sense to them. So
Yeah.
I love that so much, Laura.
I want to distinguish two things. One is random acts from experiments. And
Mm,
I want to distinguish those because they're very important. An experiment is very deliberate and intentional. And
mm,
you have a reason for why you're doing it. It's based on something. It should be supporting a strategy that you already have. And you know how you're going to measure whether the experiment is successful and
mm,
then make a decision. That is not a random act. We didn't just come up with the idea. We thought about it. We didn't just implement it. We actually put it into our plan for that year. We said, this is when we're going to run it. This is what it's going to do. This is how it ties to the current strategy that we have, right? That's different than a random act. And that's also different than just continuing to keep doing what you've always done. So random acts are things that come up as opportunities when you're being opportunistic, which is very different than being customer centric. Opportunistic is sales centric. That's not customer centric. Keep that in mind. When you're opportunistic, you're sales centric. And so
mm,
things that come up and they seem like a good idea, but remember, things that come up that seem like a good idea take time, they take energy, sometimes they
mm,
take money, and they're stealing your strategic capacity. Even if you're the one doing them and you're not giving that to someone else. If you're giving it to someone else, then it's taking their time, their energy, and your money and on
mm,
something else that might actually be moving the ball down the field. So be very careful about random acts. And one way to know whether you have them, I'm going to give you a little tip. And we have a blog on our website related to random acts. So if you go to the Vision Edge Marketing website, there's a blog. It's relatively new. If you go under blog, we just are in the middle of a technology migration. So try it and see if this works. And it's on random acts. And it's a little test. And it says, can you draw, if you take out your plan for the year, can you draw a straight line from the outcomes you want to achieve for the year through strategy, objectives, programs, tactics, and activities? Or are there things in your plan that are not on the line? And if they're not on the line, they're orphans. And those orphans either are random acts that you should probably get rid of, that are maybe things you've always been doing because you've
mm,
always done them. So they're orphans. Or do they belong in a different outcome that you have not considered and a strategy that you do not have in place, right? Don't reverse engineer. Don't try to stuff them into something. Ask yourself, why are they not on the line? Whatever the lines are, you could have 3 lines, 5 lines, however many lines you have. But if they're not on the line that connects from top to bottom, and I said top to bottom, not bottom to top, top to bottom, then you might want to consider why you're doing that. So that is something to think through. And having that line will help you ask yourself about whether or not what you're doing at this time or continuing to do is something you should continue to do.
Yes. Wow. I love this so much. So, listeners, I'm going to drop the link to the website in the show notes. Laura has graciously giving us a free gift, and Laura, I'm going to let you talk about it. Is the Accelerate Your Journey to Customer-Centric Organic Growth worksheet, and she's giving it to us for free. So, Laura, tell us more about this worksheet.
It's 20 questions that help you get to think more about being customer centric and give you some insight to where you might want to put some energy as you think about opportunities to be more customer centric. So remember, you can't do everything all at once. So prioritize what makes the most
Mm,
sense. And if you're wondering, if you're wondering what to prioritize, think about a customer advisory board. If you've been in business for a while, you're not brand new, and you have some customers, give some thought to a customer advisory board that can give that you can bounce things off people that you trust, who understand what you value, what your value is, and they value you. And you can ask them, you know, what are things that on this list where I see that we have gaps, what are the things on here that are important enough to you for me to address, to
mm,
change? That and which things on here that maybe we're not doing that well, but you really don't care that much about. So that's a great, again, also, as long as you're on the website, visionedgemarketing.com, read the blog on creating a customer advisory board because that is an extremely valuable resource for every entrepreneur.
wow. So I'm going to add those links in the show notes, guys. Go grab them and read Laura's amazing blog. And I feel like this is an invaluable resource for entrepreneurs so that you can ensure that you're setting up your business focused on the success of your customers. And when your customers succeed, ultimately you succeed as well. So, Laura, at the beginning, I know you mentioned that Vision Ed Marketing works with B2B clients. Um, how else do you work with solopreneurs and other business owners?
So we do have resources on the website for people who want to do it themselves, that workbooks and other things. And we offer advisory services where you can just pay for an inquiry. Now, this is different than coaching. I want to be very clear because I know that you have some coaches. We don't really do coaching, not in the traditional sense where this is a client that you have that you talk with every week or X number of times a month that pays a retainer for X period of time. We don't do that. But we have what we call inquiry-based advisory services. If you have a specific question that you want help with and you're stuck, and this goes, haven't talked about AI. You're not going to get the answer from AI because you really need to have a conversation with someone that is an expert in it, not someone who has something that has some data in it and is capturing it from wherever. And you want to get some assistance. So, for example, you're working on a survey instrument, and you would like someone to take a look at it and give you some feedback to your instrument. Or maybe you're thinking about a persona, and you want to talk about what some of the attributes are that you might be looking at, or some thoughts you have about how you might want to look at those attributes and organize them into personas, or you want to talk about creating a customer buying journey or a cab, and whatever it is. It's inquiry based, and you pay per inquiry, or if you have a longer project, you can buy a bundle. So those are some ways that I've been set up to help entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, smaller companies, startups that the company itself can't actually do because we really do consulting engagements. But we do realize there are people out there that sometimes just need a little extra love,
Yeah.
and we can give it to them in this way.
Awesome. This is so beautiful. So then, Laura, how can people connect with you?
So email Laura P at visionedgemarketing.com. And there is a way to book a meeting with me as well, complimentary meeting. On LinkedIn, I'm happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. So those are two different ways that people can reach out to me. And I'm always happy to hear from people. And I would welcome hearing from members of your community, Joy.
Oh, fantastic. So, guys, I'm going to put all of Laura's contact details, the email and her LinkedIn is going to be in the show notes so you can grab everything in one place. Laura, it's been a joy having you on this podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Joy.
Hey, very quickly before you go, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending time with me today. I hope today's episode gave you something powerful to add to your business toolbox, something you can come back to anytime you need a little extra motivation in your business. If you loved today's episode, the best way you can support me and the show is to leave me a review and also to share this with an incredible businesswoman like yourself. And if you're ready to create consistent 10K months with ease and alignment, I invite you to apply to join my 6 months mastermind. Visit johnnyroland.com to book your free complimentary discovery call. I cannot wait to help you step into your next level. Until next time, stay aligned, stay confident, and keep creating joyful money. Bye for now.